Welcome to the TDD Spotlight, the series where we shed some light on Pokemon you may not have considered in Triple Double Drafts. I'm your host Technovoid, and with me is your favorite Pokemon analyst, Hamsterwings. Today we're going to clear the air and show you how to trash your opponents with Garbodor. Garbodor is a C-tier Poison-type Pokemon that holds its crown as the king of trash with an iconic level of littering using spikes. With a mediocre but well-rounded spread of 80 HP, 95 attack, 82 defense and special defense, 60 special attack and 75 speed, it doesn't seem like Garbodor's stats are doing it too many favors. While its attack is not the worst, Garbodor doesn't get much in the way of offensive presence outside of Gunk Shot, leaving it to primarily act as a semi-solid disruptor with a worthwhile defensive typing. Otherwise, Garbodor is kinda garbage, so it really relies on its supportive move pool to pull its weight on a team. As for abilities, Garbodor continues to be rather rubbish. Stench gives Garbodor a 10% flinch chance on its attacking moves that don't already have any. This is not useful for Trashman, since, as we discussed, its strengths are rarely ever as a dedicated attacker. Weak Armor lowers its defense by 1 stage and raises its speed by 2 stages when it is hit with a physical attack. Again, this ability would primarily function on a sweeping Garbodor set, but with a base attack of 95 and pretty pathetic offensive options, it's a subpar option outside of Gunk Shot banded mix-ups. Aftermath is, somewhat pathetically, the ability that works best with its common sets. Upon KO, Garbodor will make the attacker lose 25% of their max HP if they took it out with a contact move. While not super relevant, it's also worth noting that the ability will not activate if there are any Pokemon with damp on the field. It's a bit sad to say, but an ability that only activates on death is Garbodor's best option since its primary playstyle already revolves around dealing an annoying amount of passive damage and generally being a thorn in the opponent's rear. Despite its reliance on contact moves, Aftermath also somehow ends up being Garbodor's most reliable ability to make use of, which speaks more to how crummy its options are than anything else. But with that being said, I'm going to turn on over to Hamsterwings to talk about some sets.
Alright, so right here we got a kind of standard suicide lead. He's got a little focus sash, he's got Aftermath so that maybe when you hit him the second time you'll be upset and take a little bit of damage after he gets some spikes up and whatnot. Typically on this set you would want to speed creep something you would think is lead, just so you can potentially get 2 layers up if you get targeted down. If you happen to get all your layers up and you don't want a dead slot, you can just blow up. That's pretty nice.
It's true. Explosion is a surprisingly useful move on Garbodor, especially, I think you talk about this later, especially with a weak armor, it can be nice.
Yeah, getting into blow up is nice. If only we had Gen 4 Explosion, though.
Oh, true. Yeah. Do you, I'm not sure, I barely looked at the sets. Do you mention Rocky Helmet on any of these?
No.
Okay, because I also think Rocky Helmet is another decent item for Garbodor.
Yeah, I think it's slashable if you, don't see yourself needing a focus sash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Or
it's just all that extra
Or
damage.
on the AV set, you could run Rocky Helmet because it has a lot of recovery on it.
Yeah, just, slightly more damage every time it gets hit is just, it's the thing Garbodor does best, being a piece of shit.
Yeah,
Alright.
It's kind of annoying.
Okay.
But toxic spikes are kind of this thing's bread and butter.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, so moving on to late game T-Spike.
So this is I don't know why I called it that. It's just because it's not a designated lead, right? Sometimes you just see an opportunity to get up spikes and you gotta take it. But it's not at the beginning of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I put toxic spikes on this. You can slash spikes or toxic spikes, and you can really get rid of drain punch to have both spikes if you want. Pain split's pretty nice with black sludge, and then gunk shot just does consistent damage.
Yeah, Gunk Shot on a mono poison type is nice because it's a nice defensive option, or rather, it's a nice defensive typing with, it checks fairies, which is cool.
Yeah, the biggest buff that Garbodor got in these 3D gens is that they changed the animation for Gunk Shot to be literally throwing a trash can at someone.
He just throws a trash can.
Yeah, that's the animation for Gunk Shot, so it's a pretty big buff for him. It really plays to his fantasy.
True. Yeah, and just something to note about T-Spikes, do keep in mind that if you are running T-Spikes, any grounded Pokemon that are poison type that the opponent has will absorb those. So you need to keep that in mind if you're running T-Spikes. In prep, decide if you want regular spikes or T-Spikes. Two layers of T-Spikes can be really good, but you do need to be careful if your opponent has one of those.
Yeah, and I know this thing's bread and butter is something that a lot of people kind of undervalue in TDD, but hazards are good, guys. They're really good.
This one doesn't get Stealth Rocks, but it does get the 2 other ones, and it's pretty nice. So moving on to AV.
Yeah, so AV, you got like a nice little AV set here. He's got a little bit of recovery and Drain Punch. Not that much because, his attack stat's not great.
Mm-hmm.
But you can deal consistent damage with Gunk Shot. You can clear Smog, which is always nice on an AV user. Drain Punch can give you like a little bit of recovery. And then you'll never overstay your welcome because you can blow up.
You can always just blow up, yeah. Sort of, yeah. I mean, I know there aren't any spikes on this point, but you mentioned in the last set that people sort of undervalue hazards. And one maybe point I'd like to make in favor of hazards to everybody watching, think about in TDD how often people are switching. And just imagine if you have spikes up. Every time someone switches, that's extra damage you're getting. That's free damage. Or you're playing mind games with them to make them not switch, in which case you have less predictions to make. So it's really kind of a win-win, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, if you see an opponent and they have like 2 levitating A tiers and a flying S tier, maybe you just don't bring this Pokemon.
That is also very true. Alrighty, but on to the last set. This one's pretty obvious. And yeah, as you mentioned, Rocky Helmet would work here. And then finally, just one layer.
Yeah, this is the set that gets up 1 layer of T-Spikes because I think a lot of people kind of obsess about getting up the 2nd layer of T-Spikes.
Mm-hmm.
But consider that 1 layer of T-Spikes gets the damage on faster.
Mm-hmm.
2 layers of T-Spikes is a tank killer.
It's true.
But starting off with that big 12% hit is very nice.
Mm-hmm.
And this one has Focus Sash Weak Armor, so if you want to get up 1 layer spikes, you get up that layer spikes, you live with your Focus Sash, and then you got 3 pretty good moves to choose from afterward.
Yeah, and you're very fast, and yeah, Haze and Clear Smog are both like very, very nice options. Explosion, obviously, on weak armor is pretty funny, and Gunk Shot is basically almost always going to be one of this thing's slots just because it works so well for it.
Yeah, just kind of its primary damage option.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on Garbodor?
I guess, I mean, you can slash Clear Smog on this set, too, if you want. This set is, I would say, the least reliable, because while they all rely on getting, like, hit, this one kind of just dies if it doesn't get hit.
That's
and
true.
proc the weak armor.
Yeah, and also things like special moves don't proc weak armor either, do they?
No, they don't.
It has to be physical. So Garbodor, I mean, and that's true with things like Aftermath, it needs to make contact. So things like Psychic really screw with this thing's abilities. Yep. Alrighty, well, I think we've trashed on this Pokemon enough. All things said, Garbodor stats and abilities both leave much to be desired in filling a keystone role on a draft team. However, as an unassuming disruptor pick, it does its job better than paper would make it look. Access to a gross number of frustrating status moves and a pretty passable defensive typing make Garbodor a solid low tier to pick up if your team lacks a dedicated disruptor. Wall breakers of all shapes and sizes are gonna love the passive damage this thing is capable of stacking, but it struggles severely against ground and psychic type Pokemon, especially those that are immune to it or can reflect back its effects. It certainly does not appreciate hazard removal either. Despite its status as a status user, Garbodor is itself pretty weak to passive damage effects due to its lack of reliable recovery and its mighty need to play into favorable matchups. If its allies can cover for its myriad of mediocrities though, this Pokemon is surprisingly capable of slowly crippling enemy teams and giving your carries sweeping opportunities. Any final thoughts on Garbodor?
I guess just in terms of pairing, it also pairs well with, a Defiant user. That's the word I was looking for.
No, true.
Because, this thing's whole thing is that it's going to get up spikes, T-spikes, whatever. And sure, T-spikes can be removed by a grounded poison type, but
yeah, or defog.
If you want to get rid of spikes, you gotta defog them or rapid spin them.
Yep. And rapid spin's not that widely used. It is a little bit more, but yeah, defog is usually the way to go, and you do not want to defog into a Defiant user.
Yeah.
Alright, well that is gonna be Garbodor. Hope you done learned something. Now, it's time for you to vote on which Pokemon will be covered next time. Will it be the normal and fighting type Beware, or the water type Alomomola? Vote in the comments down below, and we will see you then! Bye-bye!
Bye.